Greetings, sailors, and welcome to Warships, and me feeling a bit grumpy because I tried recording this one already. I sat down and did it for about 45 minutes, 2 matches, and a bit of blather besides. Was quite happy with how it had turned out, and then when I got it into the editing software, noticed that for some reason OBS had deselected my microphone randomly. It was still plugged in, it was still fine, it's just for some reason OBS had decided that it wasn't connected anymore. And so I just had 45 minutes of silent footage apart from game sounds. So I'm grumpy, but I've gotten over being grumpy enough to sit down and have another go. It's just now I'm recording this Sunday evening and it's definitely not going to be up before midnight. So I think I'm just going to record it now and then do all the rest of it tomorrow, because it's the uploading that still takes a little while. The rendering is not too bad, but uploading can still take a few hours, even with my better internet pigeons than it used to be. So, yeah, I have to kind of remember what I was talking about now. The subject of today's video, as you'll have seen from the title, is the Indianapolis, and I've chosen to focus on that rather than, say, the Royal Navy Battle Cruiser event or the economic changes, because partly it's a bit of a neglected ship overall. I think it's a bit of a forgotten ship, but also I don't actually have any of the battleships yet. I've only collected a few of the tokens, and frankly I'm not in that much of a rush because the perma camos I don't think very much of. The actual colours and the camo scheme, the pattern, is not bad. It's quite nice, actually. But why has it got all these weird brass gubbins? It's this weird sort of almost but not quite steampunk look. It's quite toned down from some of the Halloween ones, I guess. But it's still got all these weird bits of... I don't know. It's weird bits of, like, semi-decorated brass, and there's like some weird sort of cog and piston things going on, except not really. It's all very odd and half-hearted, and it's just like, here's some pipes and some random lights and a big searchlight thing on the front, and I don't know. I wish you could get this camo with all of these weird gubbins deleted, and then I might actually care to try and get some of them, but as it is, no. So that's all going on. There's also the completely ludicrously priced option of, you grind through all the tokens and, buy all the packages and get all the tokens. And then you can pay 20,000 doubloons, which is going to be what, like 40 or 50 pounds for a tech tree ship. Yeah, you can naff off with that wargaming. I mean, it's not new, but I will still continue to point out how ridiculous and how poor value for money it is, and how basically it's whale hunting. It's that free-to-play psychological manipulation at its finest, except finest isn't really the right word there, but yeah, it's pretty scuzzy. We can praise this game for some things, but we can also still heavily criticize this game for other things, and that is one of those things. The other thing I could have talked about is the economic bonuses, but you'll have seen stuff about that elsewhere. It's nice that we finally have the visuals decoupled from the economic side. So, for instance, I have the Hunter camo, which is an expendable camo rather than the perma camo, but I still have the premium ship benefits baked in, and I've got a couple of things on there besides. So we're making a bit more, a few more credits and getting a bit more Captain XP. But there is one thing to criticise that I do particularly want to point out while I'm here, and that is that for some reason, if you haven't gotten a perma camo on a ship before, it's like the first hit is really quite cheap. It's about 1/10 of the price, so it's like tier 6. It's 100 doubloons. For tier 7 it'd be like 200 doubloons, up to I presume like 500 doubloons. But after that point, as for instance with this ship where I had several perma camos for it already, the regular perma camo is still the full 2,000 doubloon price. Given that it doesn't have any economic benefits anymore, I think that is remarkably stingy wargaming. I don't see why you wouldn't have all of the permacamos now permanently reduced in price. I can understand some of the full like that's maybe not the best example, but the ones that are full reskins. Obviously, there are ones that look far more involved than this, but I can understand that because, you know, far more manpower and work time has gone into fully reskinning and adding bits to a ship as opposed to just cracking open whatever visual editor they use and painting in a camo scheme, which is going to be a far quicker process. I mean, obviously you have to check it looks all right on the ship and get it improved and all that jazz, but as opposed to actually going in and adding new 3D modeled components, it's going to be a far quicker process. So, yeah, I can understand those still being more expensive, but I still think they should be, you know, somewhat reduced in price as opposed to what they were previously. But there is absolutely no excuse for the you know, beyond the first permacamo that you buy to still be the old full price. No excuse for it whatsoever. Anyway, Indianapolis, though, the reason why I decided to go with that is that it's the latter half of June is basically the anniversary of some very important events for the Indianapolis. So I think it was around the 16th or the 15th that it set out for Tinian Island, carrying several important components for the was it Little Boy? It was the first of the nuclear bombs to be dropped on Japan. So it was basically several important components plus the enriched uranium, which comprised something like half the world's existing supply at that time. So it was a pretty important secret mission, and it was basically on the back of that, on going from Tinian to I think Guam. I did read the Wikipedia article earlier, but I was probably a bit more concise the first time round. But yeah, that's when it had its rather unfortunate and infamous end, when it was sunk by a Japanese submarine, and most of the crew ended up perishing. There were about 300 that died in the sinking of the what was it, nearly 1,200, and of the 900-ish that went into the water, only about 300 of those survived, and of course some were famously lost to shark attacks, and it's probably one of the biggest shark attacks, you know, sort of mass shark attacks in human history, and it's also the biggest loss of life for any US Navy ship to date. But yeah, there were, you know, a lot more people that just still died of you know, dehydration and exhaustion, or, you know, despair, because they were alone out in the ocean for days upon days, and people being picked off by sharks and just dying from injuries and you know, dehydration and whatever. And there was also a measure of incompetence from the US Navy as well, in that it took several days to actually realise that the ship hadn't reported in because of the somewhat bizarre reporting practices. It was kind of, you know, back at Central Command, it was just assumed that the ship had arrived safely at Guam, and it wasn't passed back that actually, no, the ship hadn't arrived. So yeah, it's all in all, it's a sort of a fairly tragic story, quite a well-known story, and it does make this one of the more historically important individual ships to be represented in game. But it's also one of the ships that you just don't see being played very often, so I thought I would give it a shake, having you know, noted that it's this time of month as far as the Indianapolis is concerned, this latter half of June, from it leaving with its top secret mission to it being sunk at the end of the month. And yeah, seeing as how it's one you don't see on YouTube or in-game very often, I thought I would give it a go. And I did give it a go earlier, and then got very grumpy when my recording didn't record properly. So, yeah, anyway. Anyhow, right, so Neighbours, not my favourite map, but it is a domination game. There's a carrier, tier 8 games. Actually, no, it's a tier 9 game. But there's only 2 tier 9s, so that could be a lot worse. So we'll see how we do. This does have the usual US Cruiser Super Heavy AP. It's got pretty decent range, nearly 17 kilometers. It's also got a 10-kilometer radar, And I think, given that this isn't a ship that you see around very often, I suspect that there are maybe people out there that either have forgotten or just haven't encountered it often enough to either remember or realise that it does have one of the longer-ranged US cruiser radars at Tier 7. It's a fairly unique feature. It's also quite a squashy ship. I don't think it's quite as bad as the Pensacola, but it's also got fewer guns than Pensacola, and obviously worse matchmaking as well. I did have a thought when I was recording the first time round that, I mean, there's not much you could do in terms of buffing firepower. I think the firepower is pretty decent for Tier 7. It's got like a 14-second base reload. 14.3, so it's just over 14 seconds. Range is fine for Tier 7. You know, armor is obviously more based on what the ship historically had. But what if you had the option of a heal in place of the surveillance radar? I think that would be a really interesting option. There is another Tier 7 US cruiser that's got a heal, the Boise, but of course that has a far shorter range. That's less than 14-kilometer range on the Boise, so yeah, that isn't like, there's a lot of maps where that just becomes incredibly uncomfortable. Was that enough lead there? Probably not. So yeah, Boise is fine on some maps, can be quite fun to play on some maps, but on other maps ends up being a bit of a pain in the arse. Right, that Yugumo's just outside of... I think they're trying to smoke themselves anyway, so rather than push in and radar, yeah, I'm being a bit cautious here. Just to almost see what there is, and which allies are coming this way as well, and pretty much it's just the turpits of anything substantial. We do have some, got that Sashio there and the submarine as well, so it's not too bad. This is not a ship you can really go, yeah, I'm going to be super aggressive. It's also not a particularly sneaky ship. So, yeah, or manoeuvrable. That's one of the things where you could maybe improve. A characteristic of this ship is improve its rudder response overall. Now, it happened there. I don't know how many people will have noticed that it went quiet for a fraction of a second, but yeah, since I upgraded to Windows 11, a very weird thing has been happening in that, for some reason, with a lot of games, World of Warships included, it occasionally puts the mouse cursor, even though the mouse is, you know, there's a lot of games that constrains the mouse within the client window, but for some reason in Windows 11 it started randomly, occasionally putting the mouse cursor, like I'll click and it thinks, oh, you're selecting outside of the window and clicking on the desktop on your second monitor, and therefore the game loses focus. And it's quite annoying when it happens. But at least you can rapidly tell when it happens with World of Warships, because I've got it set so that if you click away the... is that a setting? I can't remember if that's a setting or if it's just a default behaviour, but the sound doesn't play in the background. So, yeah. It's annoying, but it's only mildly annoying, and it is 100% Windows 11 that's doing that. I should probably be using my HE. I mean, at closer ranges, like, this is very, very good AP. It absolutely is. One of the games I recorded earlier, I had something like 110k. I was top tier, granted, and unfortunately it was a loss, but it really did show quite how capable the AP shells were, and we might get to see some of it here. I mean, that Jaws is showing a bit of, oh, of course we have the HE loaded with the battleships, but yeah, that's not good angling from the Straws, and they're trying to slowly back in there, and man, I wish I had AP right now, but I wasn't quite quick enough with the reload, and I didn't want to waste time with the reload. But yeah, yeah, it was an okay match, quite apart from the fact that we lost. I had a big blob of battleships that weren't doing particularly well. Which was always annoying when you're in a cruiser, a squashy cruiser that isn't particularly adept at carrying. So, yeah. I've forgotten kind of the general gist of what I was saying there. something about guns. Guns good. Good guns. Squashy platform. I'm trying to get in and closer to the island here so I can more safely make a turn. And also, let's get Hydro going.
The ship is on fire.
And wait till we're reloaded, because I don't think this Yumo, I think this might be one of those players that doesn't know I have a radar. So, let's go. Oh, he's there. Spoil sport. Okay, well that will drive him off at least. I am spotted by someone else, possibly the Cossack. I was really hoping I could get it. You know, I just catch the Yugomo with their pants down. There's the Cossack. Right, I'm not going to get to shoot at any of these people, am I? That's annoying. Cossack is firing, I think, so I can at least pew at them. Right, we've driven that Yugomo back a bit. But still wasn't necessarily... maybe that Yugomo was like, oh wait, Indianapolis, that does have radar. But now they're all firing at me and I don't like it.
Problem solved, sir.
So here's where having the heel instead of the radar would be a really interesting choice. And would make this actually quite a unique US heavy cruiser. I mean, one of the other things that does also make this unique, and again, a thing I talked about, is that it's the only representative of the Portland class of heavy cruisers in the game. Which, yeah, they most look like like you can see the lineage from the Pensacola. And then you get things like the New Orleans, which start to have quite a different hull form.
Torpedoes astern.
Right, that's Yugomo Torps. I think that Cossack... I think we're gonna see. I think the Cossack might be trying to make a run for our carrier. There's also an Algerie up there. Which is probably going to be better to use AP against, so we'll go with that. Well, the Cossack's there. Interesting. Okay. Try and take down this Algerie. That's an awkward looking upper part of the mini-map at the moment. Let's switch over to high explosive. That's unfortunate. At least I've got some something. I had a thought there. Adrenaline rush. I've got some adrenaline rush going because I've lost some hit points. I mean, you could slightly buff the reload speed, I suppose, of this. 14.3 is such an oddly specific base reload. It's like, why 14.3? Anyway, hopefully we can get some spotting from our carrier as well. Because that Cossack is a useful one to take down. That's the Algerie. Pop out now.
The ship is on fire.
The carrier's just circling around as well.
The enemy is about to win.
Right, I mean, we're not doing too badly on ships, but man, we are doing very badly on points. We could really do with... Oh, 15! Wow, he was so quick on... so quick on getting the DCP going. Right, both the Cossack and the Algerie got away, but the Algerie at least is very low health. 15 hit points. Like, someone... Yeah, we go. Someone took him out. I might try and cap, but with the Cossack there, I don't know if that's going to be possible. Massachusetts, yeah, I don't know if we can really afford to chase up round here. The guys in Massachusetts. We had a lot of ships sort of in an awkward position here, and I guess the destroyer and U-boat, or the sub... Well, it was a U-boat in that case. U-190 combo was enough to run interference to the point where they got boxed in. And we had a Felix Schultz, which is not particularly... Like, that's an anti-cruiser destroyer. That's not really a destroyer that's great for countering other destroyers. Yeah, that's the Gneiss now looking at me. Oh well, I think this one might be a loss. You know, technically a tier 9 game. I really haven't been able to do that much damage. I'll try and get some more done. But I think that's one of the reasons why this is not especially popular. Like, despite its good guns, it really does have a limited capability of, like, trying to control what's going on. It's not unique to it being you know, this ship being a tier 7 cruiser. There are other tier 7 cruisers that I think are equally kind of weak in that regard. But yeah, it's a pity, really. It's such a historically important ship that almost feel like it you know, it should be as popular as the Warspite in its own way. But I think just because it is at that awkward tier 7 place. And especially being a heavy cruiser, you don't have the fire setting capability, and if you don't really get the chance to use your AP to its best advantage, then yeah. Oh dear, yeah, okay, that was quite a one-sided game, just looking at the scores. Yeah, yeah, okay. Most tier 7 cruisers you would struggle to carry a game like that, but if I'd been in a light cruiser I probably would have managed more damage at least. This is one of those ships that probably would be better overall in a division than on its own. Being able to support somebody who is more able to take hits or more able to spot for you. Like this in combination with one of the sneakier tier 7 destroyers, you know, that could be a pretty good sort of complementary division. Again, a tier 9 game. I mean, just sort of like the last game wasn't too bad in terms of matchmaking. This is definitely worse. So you're sort of seeing the fuzzy end of the stick. I actually did, again, one of the matches I had earlier. That match I was describing that. I did really well on in terms of damage. That was a top tier game, so there were more appropriate targets I could use my AP shells on, and there were fewer guns that I had to be immediately worried about. But yeah, in terms of being down tiered, one of the few things this does have going for it is its relatively good range for a tier 7 cruiser. There are certainly other tier 7 cruisers that have far worse range, like the Boise, but generally speaking they are also a lot sneakier. And this is just over 11 kilometers. There are battleships that this thing can meet that are not that far off that, so yeah. The 10 kilometers is good, but it's not like, oh, you've been spotted, pop the radar like you can with some of the Soviet cruisers, or even some of the other the sneakier American cruisers, where is it the tier 10s, the Salem and the oh, the name escapes me. That's quite bad. How am I not remembering the tier 10 heavy cruiser? I don't know that one. I can remember the Salem, but I can't remember the... Yeah, well done, brain. Anyway, but yeah, I seem to remember that one also being able to just about... Actually, no, I don't think Salem can. Salem's got shorter range radar, hasn't it? It's like shorter, but it's got the extra heal capacity. Anyway, yeah, enough blether. Let's actually, well, you know, more focused blether, not no blether, but not rambling about ships that I'm not actually playing. Okay, that is a few higher tier ships. This is why I was aiming for this island. I can maybe get myself unspotted. Slightly safer turn. Is that the Bismarck firing high explosive? Okay, I mean, that's certainly less dangerous to me than a Bismarck firing AP. Do I stick with... Let's change to AP. This would actually be a fairly good candidate for having that ammo switching... Oh, yeah, that's a... Destroy that's funny. The ammo switching skill that I can never remember the name of. Yeah, because you do want to switch fairly often. Everything's kind of just annoyingly going out of range. Yeah, I'm going to have to be cautious here, which is probably going to limit my damage overall in this match. We'll see. We have a reasonably good showing of ships at the moment. Oh, wow, Prince Heinrich is being awfully bold there. Is that... No, that's DD torps rather than submarine torps. Okay, yeah, full HE Bismarck. Right, so we're going to be less worried about you then. Although that's rather annoying that he managed to take out my steering like that. So this is definitely a scenario where having the heel over the radar would be more useful. Although with that kind of thing, it's always complete guesswork as to what's going to be most useful when you're sitting in the port, because of course it's not like the game lets you choose once you are actually in the battle or at the start of the battle. I mean, hell, one of Warships does. One of Warships. This is one of Warships. One of Tanks does that now. If you do all the like, if you finish grinding a tank and unlock the alternate configurations, you can actually, you can save different configurations of equipment and consumables on your tank. So that would be a nice feature for warships, to be sure. It certainly would be, I think, welcomed even by a lot of players. That's a fire on the Degrosser. I mean, IP might be better right now, but if I can just help my allies by sapping some of his strength. Right, we're not doing too badly on this flank. We did cap the other side, but...
Torpedoes to starboard.
Yeah.
Torpedoes to starboard.
That is also quite a big blob of enemy ships there. I mean, it looks like both teams are relatively evenly spread. We may yet have that. It's this map. I quite like this map overall, but you do get that propensity of people, like, they'll poke up through the middle and sneakily try and cap, and then end up quite often just getting obliterated because they try doing it way too early in the game. It doesn't look like anyone's had that thought from either side. Right, if we can take down the Degrosser, I think that's the biggest battleship threat right here. Given that Bismarck seems very firmly wed to using high explosive. Which is not really thought of as being the best strategy for playing German battleships. Yeah, we do need to take this side because that's not looking good. That's a very wonky looking blob of ships there. Okay, who is looking at me right now? The Brest. Fire on the Degrosser. Let's actually go back to AP after this. They're showing a fair bit of broadside. And I've clicked out the side of the client window again, randomly. I don't think our U-190 is going to last too much longer. Johan de Witt's coming under some serious fire as well. This is uncomfortably close to some enemy, you know, some sort of reasonably scary enemy ships, but it's because we've got other people here. Although, having said that, people are also starting to die. George has backed off. Johan de Witt's taking a pounding, so... yeah... this is not maybe going that well. We'll try and get some fires going on the Bismarck. Although, oh, it's such a lovely angle for firing AP right now. Of course, it really does depend on RNG a bit, but yeah. Now we're pointing there, so yes, that is somebody trying to do the sneaky thing. I guess we'll see who. Radar time, it's the Kagero. So we know who it is. Points-wise, this is not starting to look so good. I can't really hunt after that Kagero as I would like to, just because, like, there's, you know, Bismarck there. It's not the scariest Bismarck, but it's still a Bismarck. It's not like I've got torpedoes or anything. Okay, a couple of defense flags, that's not so bad. We're starting to get some movement around this cap, but yeah, we have no caps right now. And I don't have radar again for another little while, and this Bismarck keeps trying to set fires on me. Really inefficient, but of course HE at least will, you know, wreck modules and things, so that's bad news for me as well, still. It's not as bad as Citadels from AP would be. And it's still absolutely not the best way to play Bismarck, but it's, you know, got its own annoyances, I suppose. Right, Hydro... not entirely sure who's aiming at me right now. Is it the Bismarck? Is it the Kagero, who still appears to be in that smoke? Let's see if we can get unspotted. Right, we can't, so I guess the Kagero is no longer in the smoke. About 47 seconds. 40 odd seconds on radar. My word, we really need a cap at this point. This is rapidly slipping away from us.
Torpedoes, direct
I was really hoping, like, that second game in the
Torpedoes,
first
direct
recording, you know, it was kind of a frustrating loss, but at least it was a top tier game where the guns really got to shine. But yeah, that's not happening this time. This Bismarck's just annoying more than anything else. Right, I can't get this cap, that's not happening. Kagero will have gone back through the middle. I could... like, is it the Bismarck my radio location's pointing at? Because I think it probably is. Guess the Kagero has scarpered. Yeah. At its heart, despite the good guns and despite it being a heavy cruiser, it's still very much a support cruiser. And now it's pointing over that way. Surely the Brest isn't... I don't know. But yeah, we're going to lose this one on points pretty soon. And in my bottom tier cruiser, there is a limited amount that I can do about it. So, oh, there's the Kagero. Right, well, luckily for me, Kagero. Oh, and a sub. was like
Torpedoes
there.
direct front.
Submarines, by the way,
Sir.
still marvellous.
Torpedoes dead ahead.
Absolutely marvellous. Oh, that's both my front
Main turret
turrets.
critically damaged.
Clonked out. Excellent. So, I can't even shoot this guy that I've got radared. Fantastic. I'm having a wonderful time.
Awaiting instructions.
Right, well, okay. This was a Sunday special. This team was fairly bad compared to the enemy team. Yeah. Oh well, we got to do a bit more with our guns that time, but again, their team severely outmatched our team. So that was that, unfortunately. But hey, just leaves me even more grumpy that the recording earlier didn't work, because it was just better overall. It was just better. So now you're just going to have to make do with this instead. So yeah, overall, I feel it's unfortunate that this doesn't get more love. I think it's a bit unfortunate that it's not a more fun ship to play, given its historical significance. But it is what it is. So yeah, I doubt you're going to see many of these. I don't think somehow me doing this video is going to lead to a sudden rush of people buying the Indianapolis. But anyway, it would be nice if it was just a little bit better, that's all. So that's it for this video. Again, hopefully you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can do all the usual things down underneath it, and of course, as always, stay tuned for more.